Alright, this is what we've all been waiting for. Here are the patch notes for 1.3 Season with Construct. These new unique gloves, Pain Gorger's Gauntlets, absolutely insane with large moves like Death Trap. S tier gloves. So many people are going to use them. The Juggernaut's aspect fixes the armor problem that Sorcs and Necros were having if you were playing like less armor available builds with multiple unique items, so you didn't get a lot of total armor rolls. It's amazing. Fixes a lot of problems. Melted Heart of Selig is like better now in some ways, but it doesn't have the infinite loop of the resource for health in a one-to-one fashion anymore. So basically it's still S tier. Obviously it's a uber unique and it actually does more damage with some builds, but it's less tanky in the uber endgame scenarios. It's still broken in every other scenario. Overpower, the affixes weren't tuned down. It was just the baseline multiplicative power. So it's less, so it gives less right off the bat, but it still scales incredibly well. Don't even worry about it. If you have an overpower build, it's still gonna do insane damage. All right, for Barbarians, this ring is amazing, and because it applies 2 stacks of Ren's Bleed with brawling skills, and then on top of the fact that Charge is getting a major buff, and then on top of the fact that Charge's aspect with the ancestral ones, and you can get most of the screen charged up and brawled and rended and everything. It's gonna be crazy. Bleed, it's gonna pop off this season. Sunder or Upheaval might actually be used now. I'm not sure, but it seems decent. Walking Arsenal, huge buff, probably A tier now. It seems pretty decent, honestly, but of course it's not Hammer of the Ancients, so we'll have to see. Various buffs to bleeds and berserking, and it doesn't specify here whether or not expertise leveling has been cut by 50%, meaning the amount required is cut by 50% or the rate is cut by 50%. It doesn't specify here, so we don't know if it's twice as fast or if it's twice as fast or half as slow or whatever. We'll have to see in game. The Martial Glyph. This Martial Glyph makes non-shout builds go absolutely crazy. So every time you use a shout, every non-shout skill reduces its cooldown by 4 seconds. If you use a short cooldown shout on top of, it's the bleeding charge leap build, it's going to be crazy. Barbarians are more mobile than ever, and they deal more damage than ever with their with the non-meta skills up until this point. Druid, Rapi's Plague-like effect gives it massive CDR with its new aspect, which is always a massive W for a skill and will make it come into the meta. People are going to be testing out this build specifically, and I'm sure it's going to make its way into a lot of people's hearts because Plague-like effects like this are super dope. Everyone loves them as soon as you start playing with them. Lacerate got a massive buff to its cooldown. We'll see. We'll see if it's usable. Cataclysm is basically dealing 50 to 75% more damage now, and like in total, including the vulnerable duration increase. And with the new Lightning Storm gloves, this is going to be interesting. We're going to see a non-perma shape-shifting Lightning Storm build that uses Cataclysm that has like close to 100% uptime, especially with all the lucky hit buffs that have come along the way during previous season's patch notes and everything. Lightning Storm, mark my words, with Cataclysm, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be fucking good. I don't know how good, but it's gonna be good. Minimum B+, A- tier. Trust me. There are various buffs to the spirit boons here. Gift of the Stag, maximum spirit increase from 10 to 20. It's fine. We don't have any like spirit expenditure skills for Druid yet, so we can't really make use of that. Avian Wrath crit strike damage is now multiplicative instead of additive. I mean, it seems like, I already thought it was multiplicative. I didn't even know it was additive. It says multiplicative already in the game, so it's nice to know that they're fixing things. Prickle Skin, this is what's most important for Druid leveling. Thorns is underestimated while leveling, and if it goes from such a, like, it was already like fine, but it's going to usable. It's usable now, and it's actually going to be the fastest way to level up, or it's the fastest way to complement your leveling instead of the other. I believe it's like 10% increased, or it's like 10% reduced damage from elites. Instead of that, you're going to use Thorns for leveling, and you're going to speed your leveling process up by a lot. Leveling for Druids is not a meme anymore. It's one of the fastest in the game, and this makes it even faster. Druids OP. Shred one-shots are no longer a thing now. Shred is still really, really good, but it's no longer like it's not as conditional. So you're going to be seeing it be used a lot more in a more casual capacity rather than just going for those like 1 billion damage moments. Boulder spirit cost reduction. If you solve the resource cost of a skill, that's a skill's biggest problem generally. If it doesn't have a cooldown, is its resource cost, and buffing its cost by 20% is insane. It's like on any skill that would like it essentially breaks it. It makes it perfectly viable if it wasn't already. I hadn't tested Boulder yet, but this season I'm playing Druid. I'm gonna test the hell out of this. Aspect of retaliation. I'm sad that they lowered the top end, but it was already too good. So I'm glad that they didn't lower the bottom end. But yeah, the top end, that's just a straight loss. It's fine though. All right, Necromancer, Mutilator Plate. This is one of the coolest implementations of a unique in Diablo 4. So, I mean, you are Blood Lanced. And when Blood Lance would deal damage to you, it instead fortifies you for 1 to 2% of your max life and has a 5% chance to form a Blood Orb. Blood Lance deals increased damage. Now, it gives another multiplicative source of damage for Blood Lance. And you know how you like do 1 Blood Lance and then basically you do 2 Blood Lance and then 4 and then like that? I'm pretty sure what they intend for this is for your first cast to be 2 and then your second one to be 4. Instead of 1 to 2, it goes 2 to 4. So it speeds up the quality of life addition to Blood Lance. And then also you get permanent 100% fortify, more chance for Blood Orbs, and just more damage. It was already amazing. With this unique, Blood Lance it's gonna be played a lot. It's gonna be played a lot. You're gonna see it a lot. It's OP, but it's not gonna be played nearly as much as Bone Spirit. Okay, they're adding another Bone Spirit aspect, and we'll get to the change of the other Bone Spirit aspect down the line. But this one, it's play Bone Spirit while you can. I'm not gonna say specifically, like you can read it on screen if you want, but I'm not gonna say specifically why it's so broken. The multiple changes to surrounding the Bone Spirit skill, it's gonna get nerfed in the mid-season patch. So just play it while you can, enjoy it. It's basically like the ball lightning of this season. It's not even fucking close, dude. It's so broken. All right, they are nerfing the damage over time Corpse Explosion and the lucky hit on Corpse Explosion, but they're increasing the Corpse Explosion base damage. So it's gonna be interesting how that works out. Iron Maiden, the damage was significantly increased, 50% here and 50% there. It's just on top of the rework of its aspect later down. It's shadow damage over time. A shadow damage minion Necromancer build is going to make its way into the meta. We're gonna see this. It's gonna be really strong. People are gonna love it. It's a really cool playstyle. I did some testing myself. It levels up really. Obviously nothing in the game levels up as nicely or as smoothly as Blood Surge for Necromancer especially, but this is basically the next best thing. And especially with the changes to Decompose. Now, Necromancers just got a new source of movement speed, and it's 30% movement speed, and it's 100% uptime. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Necromancer gaining any sort of movement speed in the game is generally, you got to be really careful because Necromancer is so imbalanced in terms of like scaling power on its own without needing like extensive itemization or anything like that. So if you give Necromancer this much move speed, like flat out, it would just be the strongest class in the game if everything was balanced and there were no bugs. Luckily, it's only on Decompose, so I'm not sure you could fit this into a Blood Surge build. Blood Surge has already been clocked in at like 19 hours in order to get to level 100. So if Blood Surge got like a 30% move speed 100% of the time buff, that would probably knock it down to like 17.5 hours. Absolutely disgusting. But luckily for this, shadow damage over time, shadow damage minions, it's gonna be sick. You're gonna love that. You're gonna love it. I'm gonna love that too. They did a little change here for a Blood Mist. It's nice. I don't think anyone used this Fortify perk. Now you gain crit strike chance, so it's going to be useful for like a Blood Lance build or even a Blood Surge build. It's just useful for blood builds now. It's nice. They took off the ability to troll your friends. This was one of the funnest ways to play the game. 2 bone necros just like trapping each other, trying to kill each other. It was fun. It was fun. No longer happens. That's fine. Bone Prison had a perk that fortified you a lot per enemy trapped by Bone Prison, and this was amazing, especially for the early game. If you wanted to do any overpowered blood surge like spoofing in the early game like that, now it reduces your active cooldowns by a good amount. Not that much. You're almost never going to use this. I'm basically never going to use Bone Prison now, especially with other sources of vulnerability being given into the game. I'm not sure exactly how good Bone Prison is going to be. It gains you a lot of essence, but I would pump my brakes a little bit. I don't think that essence gain is going to be nearly as useful as a whole nother skill. So we'll see. I'd rather use Corpse Tendrils on like a blood build instead of Bone Prison now, if I was going to choose between the two. A medium W for minion builds, specifically, basically all of them are just getting like kind of buffed slowly over time, but it's honestly the AI that needed to be buffed or changed or revised, reworked, whatever, because modern ARPGs need modern AI for their minions. This kind of AI, it probably works in D2, but in D4, Path of Exile, Last Epoch, you need a little bit more advanced AI with your minions, and I think that's what they're starting to implement here. They're trying to, they're really thinking about minions and trying to make them like better in general. We'll see how they implement it in future patches and updates, but in this one, medium W, small, medium W, whatever. Now, what I do want to highlight here is Bone Golem. The active ability now grants the Bone Golem thorns equal to 70% of your armor for the duration of the taunt. Now, this alongside the Iron Maiden changes and additions and buffs, Thorns Minion Necro, Thorns Shadow Damage Minion Necro. It's probably going to be the tankiest. It's going to be insane. It's going to be insane. And it seems like it's getting raised up to a level where you can play it. You can play it leveling and you don't need to really worry about like anything as long as you have the Bone Golem. I mean, taunt on a character that's not you is amazing. And then a taunt with 70% of your armor for the duration of the taunt, that means you're going to be using a shield to get as much thorns as possible. And in the late game with Razor Plate and a good thorn shield, I'd love to see a Razor Plate shield like unique as well, and that would just bust this build out of the water. Like, it would be ridiculous. It's already insane. I'd highly recommend trying out a Bone Golem. There'll probably be a build guide on my channel sometime. I don't know. Yep, and then just more changes and like buffs and additions to minions over time, what they're trying to do. You know, it's nice. Like, it's really nice. Yeah, like this, there's a lot of ways to give your minions a lot of attack speed, momentarily at least, and that is just going to scale their damage insanely now, apparently. So they're going to get like double damage from this one legendary Paragon node on top of the Army of the Dead. Basically doubles their damage and then like doubles their attack speed. So it'll effectively be like quadrupling their effective damage instead of like this was increasing it by 50%. Now it's basically increasing it by like 300%. It's insane. Like, effectively, that's what it's doing. It's insane. It's insane. It's insane. Again, more Bone Spirit changes. This I'm not going to go over this up. You're gonna see Bone Spirit the same way that you were thinking about Ball Lightning in season 2, the same way that you were thinking about like Shred in season 1, the same way that you were thinking about Twisted Blades in season 0 in preseason. You're going to be thinking about Bone Spirit in season 3. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's the flavor of the month, or for the next 3 months. And again, here's that Iron Maiden torturous aspect change. So before it was terrible. Now it makes Iron Maiden also a darkness skill and deals shadow damage. Enemies afflicted by your Iron Maiden chance to be stunned when they deal direct damage. That part stays the same. But now it deals shadow damage and is also a darkness skill, so its synergies are just blown out of the water. It's insane, and it deals over 50% more damage because of the damage buffs earlier, on top of the Bone Spirit, or on top of the Bone Golem changes. You're going to be seeing this shit a lot. You're going to be like, wow, this is actually such a... Like, minions, specifically shadow damage minions and thorn minions for Necromancer this season, insane. Not very many changes for companion druid, so for now, minions, Necromancer, you're gonna be you're gonna be surprised. If you try it out yourself, you'll be pleasantly surprised how strong this is gonna be. All right, on to Rogue. These Beastfall boots. I didn't actually think that any boots could be better than like Isu's Ferocity or Flicker Step, but my imagination was just failing me. These boots are insane, and they're insane not just for penetrating shot, they're insane for every single core skill, especially if you're using a combo point rogue. Like it's very good. It's very good. It's similar to the Omni Power Malignant Power from season 1. It's just on rogue specifically, and it just also gives you resource regeneration, and it's just a lot. It's just a lot of damage. There's a lot of ways to get a lot of maximum energy, and this is the first like resource expenditure thing that we got on rogue. So Rain of Arrows, we'll talk more about Rain of Arrows later, but yeah, Rain of Arrows is going to be Death Trap. Even it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. Also, even Shadow Clone, like, oh my god, this is a really nice defensive aspect for concealment. I think a lot of people low-key sleep on concealment. It's just hard to, I feel like resistance is one of the hardest things to get on rogues specifically, especially maximum resistance. So this is going to fix a lot of that for some builds, and your concealment cooldown is going to be insane now. And you actually use concealment on your Rain of Arrows ultimate spamming build, so this might actually be, I mean, concealment's probably going to end up being meta now, because this at the Uber endgame is just one of the strongest types of it's one of the strongest types of things that you can do. Plus this is super good for leveling because the plus to all res and max res for all elements. It's really nice. It's really nice. Caltrops meta? Maybe? Here's that Rain of Arrows change. Cast time reduced by 15%, and the first wave of arrows now hits closer to the player. So those were my two biggest complaints when I played it myself, and they fixed them. So I mean game over. Rain of Arrows, not even we're not even at the precision changes yet for the key passive, but Rain of Arrows was already, I would say, A tier encroaching on S tier, especially for generally up to around level 100 Nightmare Dungeons. Abattoir of Zir, it wasn't so viable. However, up until Abattoir of Zir, completely viable. It does insane amounts of damage, because each arrow in Rain of Arrows actually counts as a separate, like an individual damage instance. So it, on large bosses especially, it hits them so many times. I actually almost one-shot Zir, the Uber version of Zir, in Season 2 with Rain of Arrows, with medium gear. It wasn't even high-end gear. So if they make it 15%, if they make it cast 15% faster and make it hit closer to the player, it's going to make it much more usable. And its quality of life was really the only thing that didn't feel that good. But now, probably feels insane. And also, what else feels insane? I did a lot of testing with Cold Imbuement in Season 2, and it's got some wonkiness. It doesn't work exactly as it says on the tooltip for all skills, and I had to do a lot of testing to figure this out. However, it's broken now. Okay. Blended Cold Imbuement, that perk, it would take a long time to explain, but basically you're gonna have the most single target. You're gonna have the most single target crowd control out of all classes in the game with Cold Imbue, like Cold Imbue Flurry or Cold Imbue Rapid Fire or even Barrage. You're going to break the game. It's not even funny. It's not funny. Everything's gonna be frozen all the time. Oh, and here, we'll go down first. We're also getting increased chill effect from another source, and it's multiplicative, and it is gonna make any ranged Cold Imbue build broken, absolutely broken. Like everything they're doing is just breaking everything. It's amazing. It's honestly amazing. And also the concussive passive is getting a major buff, so it's not just against the single enemy that you knock back or knock down, it's against all enemies. That's super easy to do because you're always knocking back and knocking down enemies on a lot of rogue builds. Now, close quarters combat, small damage now. Precision, big damage now. Also Leyrana's Instinct legendary Paragon node. We'll get to that. So now precision, when you reach 6 stacks, and it stacks when you use a marksman skill, not just when it crits. It stacks up twice when it crits, it stacks up once when you just cast a marksman skill. But your next marksman core or ultimate skill is a guaranteed crit that deals 50% increased damage, consumes all stacks of precision, and the damage is further increased by an amount equal to 15% of your crit strike damage bonus. So that's amazing. That's amazing. Of course, that's insane damage. The most important part about this is that it no longer activates on basic marksman. It no longer activates on basic marksman skills. It only activates on marksman core or ultimate skills. That was the biggest problem. That was the biggest problem. In fact, if they did this with Rathma's Vigor in Necromancer, so it doesn't activate on Hemorrhage specifically, which is, you know, there's Wave of Blood, there's Blood Lance, and there's Blood Surge, and Hemorrhage. And those are the 4 blood skills. And if it just didn't activate on Hemorrhage, it would be insane, absolutely out of this world. That's what Precision does now, which makes it insane, absolutely out of this world. You're going to start seeing a lot of bow rogues this season, and also Sky Hunter specifically. So Leiron, we'll circle back to Sky Hunters in a second. Leiron is Instinct. I calculated this, taking everything into consideration. Basically, you're gonna have like 20% uptime on 100% damage reduction, and your next 3 core skills now deal an additional damage equal to 20% of your core skill damage bonus. This is ridiculous. This buffs. You see the there was a buff and a nerf to Twisting Blades right here in different ways. I'll talk about that in a second. But with Leirana's Instinct Paragon node, it fixes the amount of damage. Like it just brings that damage back up. So actually, Twisting Blades gets basically a buff. Again, they're basically buffing it again overall. Now you'll see here the Blade Dancer's aspect can now hit each enemy 2 times, reduced from 3 times. So in single target, your total damage is basically reduced by 25% because the initial hit and then 1, 2, 3. So the initial hit, and now it's just 1, 2. So 25% less damage. However, they're making it so that the blades don't have to travel a long distance in order to deal high damage. So they're going to be dealing high damage even at point blank range. That increases its usability but decreases its highest potential damage. But then with Leirana's Instinct Paragon node, it's the damage, it's going to be crazy, especially in the late game. It probably deals more damage in the late game now. Yeah, anyways. Oh, aspect of Stolen Vigor. Not a lot of people use momentum. However, now its aspect is essentially as good for Rogue as the Mage Lord's aspect is for Sorc. This is dummy. It's so dummy. Sustain and damage reduction. Another source of damage reduction for Rogue is it's not. If you use momentum, you're happy days. Here's where it gets crazy. There's going to be 2 new main setups for Rogue this season. One is going to be Prismatic Flurry. It's going to be Prismatic Flurry. The other one is going to be like a rapid fire rain of arrows build. Now, Icy Alchemist and Toxic Alchemist both now, they don't have to have the crowd control effect on them or the status effect on them in order to have the extra effect be applied. Now it's just all shadow imbued skills have a chance to do the thing that we've all wanted them to do for the longest time. People would use Icy Alchemist with like Penitent Greaves. Now you just don't need Penitent Greaves. Still good, but you just don't need them. And now both of them deal twice as much damage if something is already affected by the status effect that is synergistic with that aspect. Now, Toxic Alchemist, I'm sure is good. But Icy Alchemist, you are going to absolutely blow through the game. It's not even funny. The fact that it deals twice as much damage, the amount of damage this was doing in Season 2 on my Prismatic Flurry build, it was crazy. Now it's basically dealing twice as much damage way more consistently and without any setup required. So what you do here now is you just focus on a Shadow Imbue setup, and there's a Shadow Imbue glyph that reduces its cooldown by a lot, and then also Shadow Clone, and you can do a lot of stuff. It's going to be disgusting. I'm gonna have to make one of every class in order to showcase everything that's really going on in these patch notes, because that's how crazy they are. They're basically everything that you felt was like inconvenient or unable to be used. They're basically fixing all of it. Here's one of my favorite fixes is Sky Hunter. They are changing the inherent affix on this bow, on this unique bow, from distant enemies to crit strike damage. The only bow in the game with not distant enemies damage for the inherent affix. And then they're doubling the crit strike damage affix that was on it, and it was already really high. And now it still guarantees that your first hit is a guaranteed crit. When you consume precision after casting a skill, it gains increased crit strike damage now, and you gain up to 40 energy. So you use Sky Hunter on a barrage build. Now what's funny is that they're just adding another source of multiplicative damage and giving us even more energy back. And energy is like the biggest problem on the barrage build. So baseline, we're just dealing 50% additive more, and then like 60% additive more, and then 10 to 30% increased. Like it's insane. Barrage, you're gonna see people playing Barrage with Sky Hunter, and you're gonna be wondering why you're not playing it yourself, because it looks so fun. Eagle Horn, this is a good change. I'm not sure if it's still usable. Wind Force also is like meh. It's like meh. I mean, they just buffed it, so if you were using it before, you can use it now. It's better. On to Sorc. We already went over the new meteor aspect. It's insane, especially with the meteorite change to the meteorite aspect lower down. We'll get to that. They're adding in an Ice Blades offensive aspect. Now this is just another source of like the biggest problem with Conjuration Sorc was a couple things. Making everything vulnerable all the time, so that Ice Blades has like its effect up 100% of the time, so that you can get your cooldowns as low as possible, as quickly as possible, in like a never-ending loop. This makes that so much more consistent, and it gives you a huge damage multiplier on top of that. So there was also a base change to Lightning Spear specifically. We'll get to that. But Conjuration Sorcs, stonks baby. Ball Lightning. They nerfed it basically by like from 200 to 25% for its attack rating, like its attack speed rate, like its attack rate, its tick rate or whatever. So it's that's 1/8. So it's gonna be way weaker now. I'm not sure anyone's gonna be playing Ball Lightning for a while. Blizzard, they buffed it. Now, if you've played Blizzard before, you know that its biggest problem is mana. They made Lightning Spear. Crit strikes now apply vulnerable for 3 seconds. This is crazy for several reasons. It gives Sorc another source of vulnerability application. That's amazing. Of course, the fact that it's on Lightning Spear, the fact that Lightning Spear basically always crits anyways, in conjunction with Ice Blades, you're gonna see some crazy Conjuration Sorcs this season. I can tell you that right now. It was already on the verge of being S tier. And now with these few changes and the addition of the Ice Blades aspect giving us even more multiplicative damage, you're going to see some crazy Conjuration builds. And this is not even funny. It's probably imbalanced. Basically Fireball. This is like an indirect buff to Fireball. Apparently the crit strike chance bonus wasn't properly applying, and then they also increased the crit strike bonus. So that's this. You use this with Fireball. Oh, also use it with Meteor. So Meteor is going to be even stronger now. But Fireball specifically, this is nice. This is really nice. Here's that other change that just tips Conjuration Sorc over the edge. Is you're getting like 66% more from this Paragon node. It was already insane. Now it's going to be giving us way too much damage. Way too much. Also, this is and then here's that burning damage. You're getting 3 times as much bonus burning damage from this legendary node. I mean, burning damage was already in a really good spot, but this is you're gonna see Incinerate. People who wanted to play Incinerate, you basically just got like a free 30% multiplicative damage bonus. Firewall is even better now. All right, here it is. The change to the meteorite damage for the aspect of Shattered Stars. It changed to be a percentage of the casted meteor's damage. Now this is nuts, obviously. Before it was only dealing like 1500 damage, even at level 100, or like 925 eye level for the aspect. Now it's just dealing a percentage of the casted meteor's damage, and that ends up making it ridiculous. Also, Charge Bolt got a nice buff here. It's just a higher chance to be attracted to enemies. It was already a pretty high chance, and now they're buffing it even more. It's really nice, really nice. Ice Heart Brace, not for general. Guaranteed level ups for Nightmare Dungeons. That's nice. Scrolls of Escape count as lost items, and the stack limit is increased to 99 and appear as legendary. Let's go, hardcore players unite. Okay, less scattered prisms will drop now. Use those socket additions wisely. Material cap is up from 99,999 to 999,999, probably because of a Rob. Nobody else. World bosses are balanced now and won't drop 925 gear until you yourself are a much higher level. This is fair. It's annoying, but fair. Various balance changes, some nerfs, mostly buffs, to the power range of item drops at high levels and from bosses, except all monsters above level 144, Nightmare Dungeon level 90 plus, are now guaranteed to drop 925 eye level gear. Thank God. That's amazing. That's an amazing change. It makes it much easier to farm for those perfect, the perfect setup. You know what I mean? So it's basically like an indirect buff to armor for all classes across the board, because we're going to be getting higher eye level stuff with, we're going to get more chances at that high level stuff. So uber uniques are now transmoggable, so if you have them on eternal or if you have duplicates, you're able to dismantle them and then use them on any character. Event timers now show on the open world map. An additional stash tab, of course, the 6th stash tab. We've been waiting for it. Can't wait. Clear difference between mystery chests and living steel chests and helltides now. There are little icons on the map is what they mean, so you'll be able to tell clearly if it's a living steel chest or a chest of mysteries. Various helpful and important bug fixes pertaining to skills and perks and aspect interactions. W's all around. Let's see how the launch goes. I'll see y'all on the 23rd for the race to level 100. Peace.